What's up, good people? Michael here, host of the political podcast, Cuckoo for Politics. Thank you for listening and thank you for joining. This is your show that dives into the stories and issues and voices shaping our communities today. In this particular episode, I'm going to take a closer look at public education in the zone of northern Pennsylvania, specifically in the East Stroudsburg School District. Now, if you're just listening, you're like, well, this is not my school district. Why do I have to listen to this? I encourage you to listen because you'll be fascinating that, like in this district I'll be speaking about, like so many across the country, they're all grappling with the same issue: underfunding, teacher burnout, gaps in support for students with learning differences. Joining me in this episode is Miss Shaneka Storey, a candidate running for a seat on the East Stroudsburg School Board. Now, a little thing about her: she's a nurse, an educator, a mother, and an advocate for fairness and opportunity in education. Her story is personal. I'm going to ask her various questions like, what is her motivation to run? What is she hearing from family members, teachers, politicians? I'm going to ask her, what will it take to bring equity and transparency to the East Stroudsburg School District? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Cuckoo for Politics. Let's get ready for some thoughtful and engaging conversation while learning something together.
Sure, Michael. So my name is Shaneka Storey. I live in East Stroudsburg. As you mentioned, I'm running for the East Stroudsburg Area School Board. I've lived in the Pocono area for almost 18 years now. I have two sons that attend the North schools, Lehman and North High School, and had quite a bit of experience just with different types of schooling for my boys based on their needs. In my professional life, I am a nurse by practice. I work with oncology patients, and currently my job is working with hemophilia patients, so pediatric patients and adults. So that's a little bit about me. I'm married. My husband is retired NYPD. He's also a retired paramedic. So, just a long line of public service in our family. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, not only just public service, that talks about having a heart, compassion for your fellow man, fellow human, and that's good. Thanks for sharing that little aspect of it. That's a good husband and wife tag team as far as he's in law enforcement, saving lives, and you're definitely just all about saving lives and so forth like that. So that's good. Now, with your background in a medical field, that must be time consuming. Do you like work at certain days or at nights, weekends, and so forth?
I actually work for a pharmaceutical company. I work with the public now, working with patients, teaching them about a specific treatment for hemophilia. So I do work a lot of weekends, doing events and teaching patients about the medication. So through the week as well, but a lot of my travel is on the weekends.
All right. So you just gave me like an idea for another subject matter on the Cuckoo for Politics podcast, but we'll put that on the side and we'll connect again. But let's talk about what inspired you to run for school board. Like I said in my introduction, it's usually boring from what I've known in the past. So why do you feel like you would like to get involved in the school board? What's changed?
I think for me, probably like a lot of people in the country, you're not really with the way the country is going. And so if you have children, a family, if you don't, you have concerns about what our future is going to look like. And because I do have two children in school, I also have two adult stepchildren. I'm just concerned about the future of our country, having two Black boys, actually three, because my older son and I have an older daughter. Like, I'm just concerned about what they're going to have to face in the future, especially my younger ones. And it is affecting schools. I was worried about funding and things like that. I have a son who has an IEP and very concerned about if he's going to be able to get the resources that he needs, if they're still going to have, the IEPs in place, support them, have the teachers to support them. So a lot of things that just concerned me about where our country is heading and the overall effect that it's going to have on our children.
Just for clarification purposes, because I'm not sure, what does IAP mean?
Individual education plan. So he has some needs that he has. So he has that IEP in place to ensure that when there are certain things like testing and if he needs extra time for testing or if maybe he needs to be in a different type of class. But for him, excuse me, he's in all general class, regular classes, but sometimes he just needs extra support. He may need to take a break. Excuse me, he may need to step out of the room, something like that. Just and a lot of children are in his same position and have the same types of needs. And that's one of the main reasons why I ran, just because of concern of my children and all children, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the special attention, extra time to
Mhm.
understand the subject matter. Times the students have a different way of learning. There's group settings, and then
Mhm.
there's that one and one. I know myself, and depending on the subject matter, again, back in the day, I would have to have my parents would pay a private tutor for
Right.
to strengthen me in a particular subject matter. That helped. So it sounds like those are along those lines. And you're saying that currently is the school board looking to, lack of a better word, defund that particular program?
No, I'm not aware of that. As far as I know, in the East Stroudsburg area school district and in many of the school districts, it's still business as usual. My son is getting excellent support, but there was just that concern in the back of my mind, just hearing some of the political rhetoric, around um, defunding the education services. We know in our national government, lots of people have lost their positions, important positions around education. We also know that there's the privatizing of schools and them taking a lot of dollars away from our schools with like cyber schools and things like that. And I've tried a lot of those different types of schools. My children have been to private schools. We tried cyber school. We did homeschool. We've tried it all just to because I was trying to make sure I was meeting his needs. He experienced a lot of bullying in school, and so I was just trying to find the best fit for him. And what I came back to was public school because they had the best supports, they had the most resources, and he's done better actually being back in public school. So knowing that, and I know my son, while he has needs, they're not as significant as some other children's may be. And they may not have the resources to have done all the things that I've done and even have the same type of support that my son has. So, not just being an advocate for him, but for all those kids who maybe don't have a voice or whose parents aren't as able to come to school, advocate for them. Those are some of the reasons why I really wanted to get involved and find out what can potentially happen and how can we mitigate some of these things.
So it sounds to me you definitely thought about this because, as you know, running for school board, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a paying position.
No, it's not.
It's strictly volunteer. You're doing those who serve on the board. It comes from the heart. It has to come from the heart. And you have to think about investing not only your time, but for the future. When you started the conversation, you talked about the national trend, and you are absolutely correct. The current administration came with an agenda to not abandon, well, he is abandoning, but totally delete, terminate the Board of Education, the federal aspect of it all. And you see other states following suit or accepting that. And that's very critical to get the federal support, not just in funding, but making sure that the basics are covered for every student, regardless of race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background. And I'm finding that that is disturbing, not only funding, but it's also disturbing the fact that they're looking to delete, mitigate certain aspects of history.
Uh-huh.
And that's problematic in so many ways. Are you finding that the current school board in Stroudsburg is looking or leaning that way? I'm not sure if you're familiar with Moms for Liberty. That was a right wing organization that's looking to get rid of Black history, Hispanic history, anything with color. They're looking to get delete. Are you aware of any of that elements within the school district?
I haven't heard of that in East Stroudsburg. The few board meetings that I've been able to attend in person, I have not heard that. I do watch a lot of them via video if I can attend, and I haven't heard that come up. I will say that I know, like, so we're in the East Stroudsburg School District. I know in the Stroudsburg School District, they have, just hearing through a friend, another mom, they have some classes, that are actually talking about some of these racial issues and talking about even zoning and districting and how it was done in our area to kind of create East Stroudsburg South, East Stroudsburg North, and what it looks like in our area. And basically, a lot of the families that moved into the area have been zoned to go to North, and the ones that are more local are zoned to go to South. And there is I'm not sure if this is probably going off of what you're asking. So no, I have not heard about like the Moms of Liberty. I've heard of them. I know who they are. I haven't heard about that being an issue in our school district. As far as I know, with my sons, they're still learning, different aspects of history. Nothing has been changed. Would I like to see more Black history other than the what we normally learn about Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman? Yes, I absolutely would. But one of the things I do for my kids is that when my oldest son, when he was doing some research for world civilizations, was his class. And I told him to look up what were Black people doing during that time, like the Renaissance, what were they doing? Like there were Black conquistadors, they were enslaved people, and a lot of them won their freedom by fighting for the Spaniards. And so I encouraged him to do that. And I do that with my sons. And I try to enrich them on my own. But while I haven't seen it taken away, I'm not seeing an overabundance of information given to them either. It's the standard history, and they're not going out of their way to find, extra information to teach to children as well.
No, I understand that aspect, and is problematic. And granted, it's hard to, as an educator, it's hard to encompass all aspects of history. There's not enough time. I
Right.
think from kindergarten to high school, you are getting the basics and it's reinforced. But you're right about the Black history. It's usually slavery, civil rights, maybe Obama, then it's
Maybe,
over.
maybe.
Maybe Obama, because given the current political rhetoric by right
Hmm.
leading, they won't even take him out. So you're right that before slavery, we were kings and queens and explorers, inventors, and still are. It's just the way it's presented in various school districts. And you broke it down too, the fact that there's different districts that a parent, depending where they live, they are zoned. Do you think that's politically motivated to be done that way? Meaning, like, we know there's a certain ethnic group here, therefore let's zone them here, et cetera, or it's just a way to divide the amount of students to allocate resources? Because as you know, there are only so many teachers, and they only educate a number of classrooms. And I hear, depending where you are, public schools, you can have a small class to large classes, overwhelming for one teacher to pinpoint, educate. And then if someone who's not slow but needs extra time, then it's hard to navigate that.
I would say the way it was in a discussion I had previously with someone else that has worked in several districts, the way she explained it to me is it wasn't necessarily intentionally about race as more as it was about the new people coming in
Mhm.
versus the current people that lived here. So and
Okay.
the fact that it happened to turn out to be more of a racial divide, seemingly, is, probably not coincidental. But, when you look at South, it's a very diverse, population of students. North, it is diverse as well, but predominantly Black and Brown children go there. But I think my biggest concern is when I look at the resources between the two schools, I feel like South has a lot more dynamic programming, a lot more support from the community. And the way it's always said is that, because they're in town, where North is up on the mountain. So it's easy to be there with them. Also, South is one of the original schools to the area. So those are long-standing programs that have been here for a while. It's long-standing. So they have the history. It is the district's headquarters, for the East Stroudsburg School District. That's kind of the headquarters. So when you look at that disparity, because that's what it is to me,
Mhm.
and the kids see it too, when you talk to the students, the new superintendent went to all the schools from the littlest to the high schools, and the North kids said that. We feel like we're up here. We don't get a lot of support, where we see South gets all of these things and we don't get the same things. My kids play sports. My son, my youngest, is still at Lehman, and, just the coaching that they get is different. The support that they get is different. Like I feel like maybe they have more experienced coaches down there at South. There's more, the booster club is completely different. Like it's night and day differences. And you would even see that in some of the elementary schools, because my kids did go to the elementary school. So like, there's always this perception also of North. I was told about a soccer game because my son played soccer, and two of the referees made some very nasty comments in front of the kids where they said, I think someone didn't like a call. I don't think the mom was like completely inappropriate. She made a reference to it, and the referee turned around and said, "That's why nobody wants to come up here and deal with you guys and these kids." And so there's this reputation, of the North and I even bought into it for a long time myself. That's why it went to all these other different schools. But there is a reputation out there in the community. It extends over even out into like Bethlehem, because I have a friend whose son now goes to a private school out there, and someone said something to him like, don't bring that Stroudsburg stuff over here, that ghetto Stroudsburg stuff over here. So like there's a reputation, and it's very unfortunate, and our children are being impacted by it, and I don't see a lot of representation on the school board. There's not any diversity. And that reputation is out there, and I don't see a lot being done to try to dispel it, and that's concerning to me.
That is concerning considering the Pocono region, the district that your school board you're representing, is very diverse. I know the Poconos has the reputation of vacation weekend, that's a big part of it.
Uh-huh.
And I want to actually bring that in because when you look around, when you drive around, when you walk, it's very diverse. There's not
Hmm.
one particular. So it is kind of perplexing that we're getting that type of that demeanor as far as North and South, and there's so many connotations to that. I want to ask you. You said about the school board is not as diverse, which is concerning. Are the teachers diverse? Is it, or that's pro?
No, not really, but I think they're trying. I was very excited when one of my son's teacher, his TV production teacher at the high school, is a Black woman, and she's lovely. So like, I think there could be more diversity. I think it's important to have representation for the kids in the schools. When my boys first went back to school, my oldest, you know, had to be put back in school a little bit slowly. And so his teacher that was supporting him, she was a Black woman, and she's phenomenal. But she ended up having to go and having to be a substitute because some of her accreditations weren't accepted here. So she's going to have to take some extra classes and things like that. But, a wonderful teacher made my son's integration back into school so much more bearable for him. And when she left, he was very upset. The woman that took over his case is lovely too, but having that woman of color there to help support him and transition him back, and it was comforting to me, it was comforting to him, it was comforting to his dad. So like, having that level of support, no matter how you slice it, when it's just like in healthcare, when
Mhm,
you have someone that looks like you
mhm.
supporting you and understanding where you come from, it makes a difference. It doesn't mean that the other teachers aren't good teachers, because honestly, all my kids have had good teachers. They're very communicative with me. They know who I am. Some of them are actually very surprised with the amount of interaction that I have with them and following up and things like that. But yeah, it makes a difference. So yes, there are some, but there could be more.
There could be more. No, you're right. I remember I'm a big fan of history. However, in the beginning, I often complain. I didn't do very well in history in elementary school. And my mom would, when they have the parent teacher conference,
Uh-huh.
are you failing or having just barely passing? I said, Mom, why do I need to learn about dead people? That was my response. And because I mean, the teachers were good. It's just I didn't care about dead people. However, there was one male teacher. I don't know. He is the way he taught. He lived and breathed history. And I was enamored. I was like, whoa. And from that point forward, I majored in history. I got a master's. I mean, I just kept going because of that one
One
teacher.
teacher. Yeah.
You're right about something. Again, it's not about the different teaching style, but it's because I connected with him. I
Hmm.
saw myself in him and I'm like, bam, that was it. So there's an art, there's a skill, and we could talk about how teachers are not fairly compensated their due
Yes.
because of it. There's no, if you ask anybody, if you wanted to be a nurse, law enforcement, go into the airline industry, to a politician, to working for the city, whatever the case may be, the only way you could be successful, business person, entrepreneur, is a teacher. There's
Exactly.
no doubt. Even coaches in sports, those are critical roles no matter where you are, who you are. And talk about funding. I said earlier, the Poconos is known for tourism. It makes lots of money no matter throughout the year. There's so much to do. A little plug for Poconos, by the way. There's so much to do no matter what season you could come and you'll enjoy yourself. But I find it ironic that with all the money from the casinos and tourism, along with other property taxes and et cetera, the Poconos doesn't get its fair share. I think I was reading what your bio. We are ranked 500th out of 500 in school funding. Explain that to me and to the audience.
From what I understand, and I learned this fairly newly too, talking to State Representative Tara Probst, was when I decided to, run, she was explaining some things to me and, how she was able to get more funding and, change some things around. But yes, our school district is like out of 500 schools, we receive the least funding. And she has been able to increase that. However, we still rank the lowest. And, we had this discussion at a meeting about why is that when we bring in all this revenue, but more than
In
that,
the millions.
yeah, how it impacts our students. Like, they're not getting what they need, the resources that they need. And for a long time, it was our property taxes that were funding everything. And State Representative Tara Probst was able to help change some of that around. But still, I think we still are receiving the least. And those would be questions that would be nice to be answered at Harrisburg. Why is that? I would like to know how much we're bringing into the state and why we're receiving the least, so we should be getting our fair share as well. And our kids should be receiving those resources. And once we get those resources, we need to make sure that all of the children are getting them and not just some. So, like, that's the other thing, too. Like, even out of what we are getting, how are we making sure that all the school districts are getting their fair share and it's not going just to one school or whatever? And I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I'm not there. I don't know yet, but I'd like to know, how that's happening and making sure that the teachers are getting fairly compensated. My kids were in school when they had the strike several years ago. They were young, but that was a huge impact, and being a parent who has a little bit more flexibility in my job schedule, even then I was fortunate, but a lot of parents don't have that. So we want to make sure that things like that never happen again either. But teachers do deserve to be fairly compensated. They don't make enough for what they have to deal with. I have friends that are teachers now and principals, some in this area, some in other states, and some of the things that they're having to deal with in the classroom, they are not making enough money. Like, they're having to parent and they're having to be therapists and they're having to worry about their own safety, and being accused of things that really are not their fault. There's only so much that they can do in a day. So they need to be compensated and cared for as well. And even their mental health and their physical well being. So there's so much that is concerning. And then when you add on top of it a national administration
Mm.
that just honestly does not care, and there's just no other way to say it, they do not care. It's actually very frightening when you really get down to it.
You're so right. This was a failed businessman who conned the country or voters to thinking that he was successful in business and that he will do the same. But again, that's not why we're talking about per se. I don't want to focus, but it's ironic how the national politics definitely trickles down to local politics. But it seems like you have a good relationship with State Representative Tyler Probes, who gave you an explanation. And if you, let me correct myself, when successful on the school board, you could lead the charge and get the questions answers and then probably go to Harrisburg. Because I'm curious, is State Senator Rosemary Brown, who represents the Poconos, is she supporting fair funding? That's a good question to ask, because you can always
Yeah, I
have
don't know.
you can always have the General Assembly, but you also need the state Senate to approve
Mhm.
the budget. I don't see the Governor Shapiro rejecting fair funding, but that's something that we will have to dissect. Let me ask you something. Are these concerns, by the way, of fair funding and teachers, is that shared by other parents you talk with, or other school teachers, or other current school board members?
I haven't had a lot of conversations with other school board members, honestly, but I know it's shared by teachers. I was, able to talk with some of the teachers' union representatives and talk to them. And I know it's a concern for parents. And it's definitely, like I said, I have several friends that have taught in the district. They are not currently teaching in the district, but I have friends that are currently teaching in the district. And yes, it's definitely concerns for them, because you want to make sure that your teachers are fairly compensated because that's the only way you're going to get good teachers and keep good teachers, especially with all that they are dealing with from the babies to the high schoolers. Our kids, it's a different generation. And
Hmm. You're not mean to cut you off, but you're so right about different generation. And I met the next generation of teachers at a public event. And can I tell you, she's been involved in teaching for less than 5 years. She's from here. Beautiful, engaging. I can't tell you. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to be great. After 3 years, she left. I'm like, why did you leave? And I was talking to a veteran school teacher, and she's like, I can't take the amount of stress that they're putting us. I could work elsewhere with the intent of educating in a different way without the burden of the bureaucracy, first of all. But
Mhm.
the classroom sizes are getting bigger and bigger. And to your point about different generation, our parents would work hard and
Yeah.
they would stick it through. This generation, they're like, "Oh, no, I'm tired. I ain't doing this."
No, they're not.
They're
They're not
moving
going to do
on.
it.
And so
Mhm.
if we don't correct it, then I don't know. But I thought when she told me that, I felt students are missing out because she just had a wonderful spirit, a genuine spirit in teaching. And that's, again, that's priceless. Can't find that. Let me ask you something about the PA area, the Pocono area. As you know, when you talk to people who live around here, the parents particularly, some of them work in the PA area, but
Yes.
many of them, particularly in this area that you're representing, looking for, they work in New York City and they
Yes.
commute. That seems to be problematic in a sense, not to say that commute, but in order for a child to succeed, you're going to need the parents being present, not just physically, but
Mhm.
in so many ways. Are you finding that students are not getting adequate, proper support? Not to say parents are not involved, but cannot be easily engaged because by the time they commute, traffic, whatever, they have so much stress going on at work. Then they're tired mentally and physically. By the time they get home to go over homework and stuff like that, are you finding that being an issue, or parents talking about that? That's why they would like fair funding to help them understand the new subject matter, but also having after school programs and so forth like that?
I've been that parent.
Okay.
I commuted for like 7 years to the city to work, and so I've been that parent, and when my boys started school, I came closer to home to work at Lehigh Valley. So I do think I haven't heard parents talk about that specifically, but I know it's an issue. I have had parents when I've talked about, being more engaged, going to school board meetings, talking about, it's on a Monday night at 7 o'clock. I might just be getting home. I still gotta cook dinner. I still got it's a lot. And so one of the things I did share was that, everything's recorded via Zoom. You can get on via Zoom, so you can still engage. And if you can't watch it, you can't get on it live, you can listen to it like later, go back. And you don't have to listen to all of it, but even the different committee meetings are televised via Zoom and recorded. So, there are other ways to engage if you are a commuting parent. I do see, like, when I go up to the schools, like for the parent night for Lehman, when I went, one of the things that I think is sometimes a challenge with the schools is the lack of communication that sometimes comes from them, just in my own experiences. And I've seen, like, just in this last few months since the boys have been back in school at both schools, I've seen a tremendous change in the communication with the parents, getting information out, especially with Lehman and with the new principal that they have. North is better. There's some things I would still like to see get a little bit better as
Agree.
far as communication. But I think when you communicate with the parents and invite them in, that's something else that I feel like parents may not feel welcome. Like when
Mm,
I was in school, my mom could come anytime, drop off cupcakes. If it was my birthday, she's bringing cupcakes to the school. Like,
mhm.
it's like a act of Congress to get into the school now. So, like, it's not the same, and I understand for safety reasons why it's not, but I think the more we open the schools up to the parents in a controlled way, I think the better your students will behave. I think that you'll have more engagement with the parents, but just making families feel welcome. And I do know that the new North principal made a point of saying that at freshman orientation, he wants it to feel more like a family. I think there's still some work that needs to be done there around the way communication comes across sometimes. But, there's a visible effort to doing it. But I've definitely seen a difference. And I think that will bring more parents in, get more parents engaged, but also finding ways to help that commuting parent engage in the classroom. And some of that's going to be on teachers too. It may not always be that the parent teacher conferences.
Mhm.
You can either go in person or you can do it via Google Classroom. For my oldest son, I was away in Chicago. So I had to do a lot of Google Classrooms for his parent teacher conferences. But teachers can reach out, but they'll find a way. Like I've found the faculty to be very accommodating and helpful.
It sounds like you have built or established a good relationship with various parents, school board members, even teachers, and so forth. So this seems like you're well rounded. I think you're ready. You sound, and this listening to you, have a calm demeanor, which is a big asset because if it's going to be hopefully not like that, but I've seen videos of intense school board meetings, and I'm like, where did this come from? You're going to
Mhm.
need someone. It seems like you have that tone to, like, okay, calm down. Let me explain the situation, and let's work together. Let's have a collaboration because parents, teachers, school board members, you guys can't be enemies. It takes a
No.
village, as
Yeah.
that old saying is, and things are complicated, and it's unfortunate, very unfortunate that the national politics have gotten into the way and have kind of put a stain on this. What would you say to the voters? I'll let you close out with this. What would you say to the voters? Please consider me on school board. Why?
I think because I'm a mom and I know what it's like to have a child in school. My kids are currently in the school district. I'm very committed to fighting for all children, not just my children. And I want to bring more parents in. I want to engage the parents more to come to school board meetings, even bring your kids. Let them learn about this process and how their voice matters. And it is important to have representation. It's important to have someone that looks like you that can speak from your perspective of what it's like to come and live in the Poconos, from someplace else. I've been here now for, like I said, almost 18 years, but I wasn't always from here. And I've had kids in the school district. I've done all of the things. So if there's a parent that's like, I don't know if this is where I want to stay, should I try cyber school? Is this going to make it better? I can speak to those things. And so I think I have a well-rounded viewpoint as well. And I think that's me in a nutshell. And I'm the person that's willing to step up and help. That's just my nature. I'm a nurse by training, so helping is in my blood. It's what I do.
Well, no, you said it there. Again, like you from the introduction, it comes from the heart to be a nurse. It's not easy. It's totally not easy. And when becoming a teacher, working in education, particularly public education, is a noble profession. It doesn't get as many accolades as it should, as the
Right.
country seems to be focused mostly on athletes. Again, not taking away
Yes.
from their role, but in order to be an athlete, it was a school teacher or coach that got you to where you are successful.
Absolutely. Yes.
Ms. Story, thank you again for joining this podcast discussion. I wish you the best on your candidacy, and I wish you the best of success. And hopefully, I want you to come back not only about the medical, but also as a school board member. What did you learn, and so forth like that.
Sure.
All right, definitely open invitation, ladies and
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Michael.
Stay tuned for my closing thoughts. All right, you're good. All good. Before we go into the discussion, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast, which can be found on Apple, Spotify, or the Cuckoo for Politics YouTube channel. Once you subscribe, you get the latest episodes along with bonus content. You could follow me on social media on Facebook, Cuckoo for Politics, or on Instagram, cuckoo_4_politics. Feel free to comment on any of those platforms as I welcome all feedback. Past episodes can be found on the cuckooforpolitics.com website. Once again, subscribe, follow, and support. Well, it's a wrap, good people. My conversation with Miss Shaneka Storey. What I like about our conversation is that she embodies a kind of leadership that every community hopes for in schools. She's calm, she's grounded, she's guided by both experience and empathy. Listening to her, her tone speaks volumes. She's not driven by politics or partisanship, but by purpose. Through her work as a nurse educator and as a parent, she's learned a meaningful change doesn't happen in isolation. She's taken time to build genuine relationships with parents, teachers, union leaders, and local elected officials. It seems to be done generally all in a spirit of collaboration and not confrontation. Now, personally, having navigating her own children through private, cyber, and public schools, she brings a rare perspective. While she values the different learning experiences at each setting has provided, she's come to believe that public education is where democracy truly begins. Think about it. In a public school, all children from all backgrounds come to learn together, grow, and understand one another. It is why she believes so deeply that public schools must be fully funded and fairly supported. She knows that the current funding formula has failed East Stroudsburg and other districts like it. The East Stroudsburg Area School District serves a large and diverse student population, yet it's ranked 5 out of 500? Can't be right. That equity isn't abstract, it's real. It's felt mostly sharply by East Stroudsburg North, where her two sons attend school, one in middle school, and the other in high school. From classroom resources to after-school programs, the disparities are visible, and they're a big part what inspired her to run. In her own words, again, she's not a politician, but she's indeed a mother with a mission grounded in the belief that democracy begins in the classroom. Her steady demeanor, her thoughtful leadership, and her commitment to inclusion make her not just a strong candidate, but a voice of reason and a hope for the future in public education in East Stroudsburg. Yep, she's ready. She's ready to work for a fairer system, ready to ensure that every student, regardless of zip code, gets equal opportunity and the tools to thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, a reminder, Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th. If you're voting in person, know your polling location. And for Pennsylvania voters specifically, doors open at 7 and they close at 8. As long as you're in line by 7:59, you can vote. However, if you get to the polling station and you find that you're at the wrong location and they tell you that the one that you need to vote is too far, hey, ask for a provisional ballot. It'll go through another process, but your vote will be counted. I would ask that if you have your mail-in ballot, at this point, take it to the county election office or a secure election box so your vote can be counted on Election Day. It has to be in by Election Day. Again, vote for the candidates. Shaneka Storey definitely is ready for East Stroudsburg School Board. Once again, this is Michael, host of the political podcast Kuka for Politics. Until the next episode, stay blessed.